Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Positivity Hour today. I am not Caroline. Caroline had a conflict today, so I am the lucky person who gets to host for today. And I'll be introducing our speaker, Sandy, in just a moment. But like we always do, can we start with a centering? Yes? Yeah, I like to see the nodding head. Thank you, guys. So wherever you are, I invite you to put your stuff to the side. And more importantly, maybe put the mental stuff to the side. And by that, I mean, sometimes I notice when I go to do these just quick, deep breaths, I'm thinking about the things that came before this, the things I have to do after this. So not only getting your space centered and clean, but also just saying to your brain, right now, I'm just going to put this to the side. Take a deep breath in and a big exhale. One more deep breath in. Big exhale. And that pause point is really just a time for you to notice what's happening now. So take your attention all the way down to your feet. And just notice, there are feet, ankles, shins, thighs, all the way up the spine to the crown of the head, and just noticing the sleeves of both arms. And as you notice the breathing body, getting a sense of the whole body. You are more than just a brain walking around. You're more than your thoughts. There is a whole system, like a whole universe within you. So just doing a little check-in. What's happening physically for you right now? Is it pretty comfortable physically inside of you? Are there any aches and pains or sensations? Or is there just a neutrality? How would you describe your physical well-being? Now go just a little bit deeper, past the muscles and the bones and the organs, and into the emotional sense of self. What emotions are present for you now? Happy, sad, bored, elated, contented? How would you describe the emotional state at present? Getting a sense of your mental health in this moment. Is the brain very busy? Are a lot of thoughts popping? Or is it relatively calm and even and still? How is the brain doing this morning? And finally, noticing the whole you. Body, the mind, the spirit, the thoughts, the emotions, the physical sensations, all of it. Taking a deep breath in. Big exhale. Opening your eyes and coming back together into our call. And that's really a celebration for what we call whole being or whole person well-being, which is what Sandy's going to discuss today. So let me go ahead and introduce my friend, Sandy. I am so grateful I'm able to do this for you, Sandy, today, because it's always a pleasure working with you. So after spending 10 years in a major pharmaceutical company, Sandy Campbell decided to stop working in the corporate world and start improving it instead. As a health and wellness coach, Sandy's passion is helping clients achieve their full potential by supporting them in making small but highly impactful shifts in the way that they eat, the way they think, the way they move. She holds an MS in counseling psychology from Villanova, as well as degrees and certifications in integrative medicine, nutrition, mindful yoga, and of course, positive psychology through Whole Being Institute, where she is currently on faculty as well. Oh, that's what the next sentence says. Sandy serves as faculty in Whole Being Institute's certificate in whole person positive psychology and was a presenter last year for our positivity series. You can learn more about her corporate programs, her clean eating boot camp, and healthy recipes at sandycampbell.net. And I'll write that in the chat once I hand it over to her, so you all have that URL to stay in contact with Sandy. Over to you, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Megan. Thank you for that wonderful introduction and that wonderful grounding. And it's wonderful to see everyone here today. The beauty of Zoom, right? So I'd like to start right in by engaging you. So what I'd like to do is think over the course of the last month or two and think about a typical week in your life. So I'd like you to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be listing some symptoms and signs of your body being out of balance. I'm going to list those to you and think about a typical week in your life. And, once I name these different signs and symptoms, do you experience these on a fairly regular basis, 4 or 5 times a week? So I'm going to engage you. If you can give me some sort of a wave or a thumbs up or type in the chat if you agree with what I say, that would be wonderful. So signs and symptoms of body out of balance. How many of you on a weekly basis feel quite often you have low energy? I see some hands. Yeah, me too. How about low mood, like sadness? How about some worry and anxiety? Yep. How about feeling kind of cognitively fuzzy, like brain fog? Sometimes I feel like I've got cotton in my head. Yeah, absolutely. How about stomach upset? Anything, maybe, even acid reflux, a little bit of, stomach problems. How about headache? How about skin problems? Maybe adult acne or eczema, psoriasis? Yep. And then one of mine, how about allergies, sinus congestion? Yep, especially this time of year, right? Well, you can see you're not alone. And before we talk about some of these signs and symptoms and where they're coming from and how we can kind of address them, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I always love to hear everybody's story, so I'll tell you about myself and how a period of time where I was really experiencing a lot of these signs and symptoms. So as Megan mentioned, for 10 years, I worked for a major pharmaceutical company. And part of my job was to go into physicians and talk to them about my medications. My medications were for depression, anxiety, for acid reflux, for diabetes. So I would go in and talk to them about these different medications. And just what I was doing on a daily basis is I was oftentimes bringing food in, for lunch and meetings, which might be like pasta and pizza and maybe a salad, some cookies, cakes, those kind of things. So I was eating that on a regular basis during this time. In addition, my stressors were really quite high. The job was fairly stressful at times. Besides that, I had my husband who was in medical school, then residency, then fellowship. I had 1, 2, 3 babies, and I wasn't really taking very good care of myself. Sleep was off, wasn't exercising like I should, and definitely wasn't taking care of myself from a self-care standpoint at all. So these things started to catch up, of course. And so my body started throwing up some signs and symptoms. I like to use this as my little red flag, my signs and symptoms. My body was saying, pay attention to me by saying, I got some stomach problems. I've got these allergies, sinus congestion. Please pay attention to me. And so, I was kind of used to this kind of medical model. And so I'd go to different physicians, different specialists, see if anybody could help me. I was really looking for a new medication, something else that I could take to make myself feel better. But I never really did find that, never did find that. So fast forward a couple of years into the future, I still was feeling these signs and symptoms. And honestly, my grandmother had Parkinson's disease, and I take after her a lot. And her biggest complaint was not being off balance. It wasn't her tremors. It was my stomach hurts, my stomach hurts, my stomach hurts. And so I was worried that maybe that was where I was headed. I knew I had to do something different. I mean, I remember standing in the kitchen with my husband, and I said, I know I look okay and I act okay most of the time, but I'm not right. Like, something is really not right. And medical tests all came back, you're fine, you're fine. So I knew I needed to do something differently and take really my own health into my own hands, and found this wonderful nutrition school and got a certificate in holistic nutrition, where I was able to try out these different dietary theories, different ways of eating. And I felt like the clouds parted. I felt so much better. And then I learned about positive psychology. And right away I was told, oh, you must look into the Whole Being Institute. And once I was able to couple that positive psychology with the healthy eating, I just felt like things had come together. Just from a whole being perspective, I just felt so different. I felt like it was a new religion. I wanted to tell everybody about it. So the talk that I'm going to be giving you today is two of my favorite topics: nutrition and how that comes together with positive psychology. And I'm calling this Hope and Your Health. So I'm going to pull up my slides here. And I'd like to show you an image here. So when we're talking about hope, I don't know, I'm sure many of you have seen Molly Shannon. Here she is doing her Sally O'Malley. This year I'm turning 50. So not only am I interested in health for all these reasons to help with my signs and symptoms, but I'm so interested in aging well, right? The second part of my life. What I think is so funny about Molly Shannon's character is she has high hope. Here she is. Remember, she says, I'm 50. I can kick, I can stretch. And so when we're talking about people who have high hope, as Dan Tomasulo told us so brilliantly 2 weeks ago, we're looking at a person who can see that there's a challenge in their path, and yet they employ self-agency. They know that there's steps that they can take to make their future better and brighter. They know they have a choice, and they know that they can influence their own behavior. Dan says that we need to look at hope as more of a verb, a moving forward. It's one of my favorite positive emotions because it needs negativity and challenges to emerge in order to move towards this better reality, right? So that's what's so interesting about hope. Hope is also my word for this year. I'm sure many of you have been using that word a lot as well. So we have a lot of challenges right now. A picture says 1,000 words, right? So I find that when we're looking at coping with, some of these challenges we're still, facing around our health, job concerns, relationships, connection, what does it look like to kind of move back into the world in a more full way? We have these different challenges, and people cope in a lot of different ways. I noticed that when, I get together with people and we're talking, everyone wants to tell about the latest Netflix series that they're watching. Oh, you must watch A Place to Call Home. You must watch Schitt's Creek. We're coping a lot with Netflix, which is great. I completely do that. But I think that there's this missing piece, this root cause of what really does drive our health and our happiness and our coping mechanisms. And that is the way we treat our physical body. As Megan says in the Certificate of Positive Psychology, if there's one habit that you might move a little bit closer towards, that's just something that's kind of a no-brainer that will help to affect your overall well-being, it's physical, how we eat, sleep, and move. So today I've been asked to specifically talk about nutrition and how nutrition can really help to engage our overall health and our overall happiness as well. So a couple depressing slides before we move on to the hope. Chronic disease affects 6 out of 10 Americans. We're talking about dementia, autoimmune diseases. We're talking about heart disease, diabetes, cancer, neurological problems, depression, ADD, allergies, reflux, irritable bowel, hormonal, skin. A lot of these chronic diseases, all of them, are rooted in inflammation. Back to those signs and symptoms, the red flag, right? These signs and symptoms often turn into this chronic disease. It's our poor bodies trying to say, please pay attention to me. I'm telling you things aren't well. I'm telling you things aren't well. Please, please pay attention to me. And this is what happens when we just kind of keep, like I said, back when I wasn't feeling so well, just sleep was not a priority. Exercise wasn't a priority. I wasn't taking care of myself. The signs and symptoms kept coming. And this can turn into chronic disease. What's really discouraging about this slide is that when I've been using, this information, of course, for a couple of years, but the last time I checked on this specific data, it was 5 out of 10 Americans. That was about 2 years ago. The statistic is now 6 out of 10 Americans, which is quite scary. And we're all interested in our immune system right now, right? Because of COVID. And we know that this vulnerable population who are the most affected by chronic disease are more likely to be affected by COVID. So we need to protect this population, do whatever we can to help this population to address signs and symptoms, to become healthier and happier. So we're talking today about food and how food can affect inflammation, chronic disease. I think this is a great quote from Dr. Daniel Amen, who's a specialist in brain health. We have more knowledge about food and more options than ever, yet people are getting sicker and sicker because of lifestyle diseases like diabetes. Where did we go wrong? How did we stray so far from real food and get to the point where most people are accustomed to box meals loaded with 20 unidentifiable ingredients, and others are finding themselves lost in grocery stores saying, what is it that I should eat? Now, as we move forward, I just want to point out that a lot of the information that I'm going to be sharing with you today is from the Institute of Functional Medicine. I took the cover off this book, but this is Dr. Mark Hyman's book. It's called Food, What the Heck Should We Eat? It's a really great book. So I am not a medical professional, but I am here to offer any lifestyle suggestions that might be helpful to you. Anything that I bring up is still, some of the things still are very controversial because the field of nutrition is very confusing. So this is lifestyle advice. And of course, consult your doctor or other medical professionals for your specific, recommendations for your specific body. But as we move on, let's really, really acknowledge the fact that nutrition is a confusing science. How many would agree with me that nutrition is a confusing science? Every time, you look up, any of these foods here on the screen, are they good for me? Are they bad for me? You can find studies and you can find experts who they're all over the place with their different recommendations. And oftentimes what's understated with this is our own individual bodies react in different ways. I mean, for the most part, we can agree on a couple of things. Most experts can agree on eating real whole foods. They can agree on eating seasonally. But when we start to talk about some of these different variants, a lot of this has to do with your own individual body and how your body processes different things, okay? So food sensitivities are kind of something that are underlying a lot of these questions. What's good for me may not be what's good for you. We'll keep that in mind as we move forward. So I'd like to engage you right now. Maybe you can type into the chat, what is personally confusing to you about healthy eating and your own body right now? What are you finding personally confusing?
You want people to put that in the chat? Oh,
yeah,
Kate said, eggs, are they good or bad?
Yeah, okay,
question,
great.
Kate.
We're going to talk about that. Wonderful.
Gail asked a question that I'm doing right now. Should I be fasting intermittently? Dairy, big question mark from Marsha. Lois had lost 33 pounds over a year ago. Prior to the pandemic, I've kept it off, but still need to lose the last 10. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Vince, not confusing, but challenging. Want to eat things that I know are not supportive of health.
Yeah.
Nancy asks, is honey better than sugar? Another Nancy, love my carbs, mostly complex. Is that bad? Should I continue to try and eat a whole food, plant-based diet? Allergies, gastro diseases, anti-inflammatory, milk, whole fat dairy for brain health, or low fat? What to eat? Is gluten okay? Ancient grains okay? Intermittent fasting? It's so confusing.
Right?
Remove the sugar, remove the gluten. Doing this will make you feel better. Yeah, so there's a lot going on here.
Right. There's a lot going on here. And we're going to address nearly everything that was brought up. Keep in mind, this is from a general perspective, keeping in mind that your own individual body is the best indicator. We'll give you the best information as to, whether these foods specifically are good for you or not. But here is the foundational, fabulous, hopeful news about nutrition. And that is that food can heal. Remember all the different chronic diseases that I just mentioned to you? Food can cure depression, diabetes, arthritis, autoimmune disease, headaches, fatigue, and insomnia. I've seen this happen many, many times. Lots of information out there on this particular thing. How food can prevent and reverse dementia and heart disease or 100 other common diseases and symptoms. This is a huge discovery. One of the biggest discoveries since the antibiotics were discovered in 1920s. That food has such healing power. Food has significant impact on our overall well-being, on our brain health and preventing dementia and cognitive decline, not to mention that brain fog that we talked about. Food exists to energize, heal, repair, and uplift. It can create health or it can promote disease, and it controls every body and mind function. Food is medicine, is the functional medicine approach. So when we're talking about hope, at the Whole Being Institute, we love to talk about hope and how it relates to the past and the future and the present. So we're going to weave this through our talk today. Hope involves the past. So another foundational, theory of all this is bioindividuality. We're all very different, right? We're all very different. So what we want to do is think about our own past and when we felt the best. So maybe just jot down, just for your own information off to the side, at what age did you feel your very best? At what age did you feel your best? So really anchor into that and think about at that age, what you were doing, what you were eating, how were you moving in the world? Were you training for a, 5K run, or were you really feeling elated by a relationship that you're in, really loved your job, really, on a specific way of eating that made you feel good? So what did that look like? So we look to the past when we're involving hope, looking to gather some information here first. Okay. So hold that off to the side. We're going to use this information a little bit later as we move to take action and take some steps forward in hope. So that's the first thing we do. We kind of think about when we felt our best. Next. So the question becomes, how do we create abundance, health, joy, happiness, and energy through food, right? These are the main questions. I'm sure a lot of you would agree. Yeah, I agree here. Food is a problem. I think the field is confusing, but what exactly are we looking at? What options do we have here with food? So a couple things that we're going to do. I'm going to engage you with, I have little, a couple slides here that have quizzes. So some quizzes and some questions around food. And this is one way that we're going to cover a lot of material by answering some of these questions. So are you ready? I'm going to ask you again to type into the chat true or false. Here's your pop quiz. Number 1, if you want to lose weight, you should eat less and exercise more. True or false?
People are typing in now.
Okay.
False, depends. False, true, true, true. We have a lot of trues. We have a lot of depends. We have a lot of some false. Eat less calories and okay to step up exercise. So there's not a consensus, it looks
Okay.
like true or false.
Yep, yep. And you're going to find this with a lot of the questions. And they're a little provocative. I'm going to put that out there right now. They're a little provocative. False. The lie we've been told is that weight loss is only about calories. 1,000 calories of Pepsi are not the same as 1,000 calories of almonds or of apples or bananas. This doesn't make intuitive sense. And science has proven that calories that spike your blood sugar and insulin promote weight gain, while calories that do not spike blood sugar and insulin, especially fats and some proteins, actually speed up your metabolism. So I know some people said, it kind of depends. Well, right, we're not going to eat almonds and 50 bananas a day. That's probably not good for our health. But a calorie is not a calorie. I remember this poor friend of mine in high school, back in the day in the 80s, we were told that fat was bad for us, but there were all these products that came out that were loaded with sugar. And she would sit at lunch and eat one little yogurt. And she was starving. She was just starving. And I'm sure that the yogurt had a ton of sugar in it, which was just messing with her blood sugar, right? Spiking her insulin, spiking her glucose, and then spiking her insulin. Okay, number 2, frozen berries are better for you than fresh. True or false?
Some people are saying true, some are false. They're both good.
Mm-hmm.
Wild berries are better. False.
Mm-hmm.
True. Always fresh berries are wonderful. False. False. The same. Both are good.
How about this? Believe it or not, frozen berries have high levels of nutrients because they're picked ripe and frozen. Fresh berries are often picked too soon, transported long distances and stored. Now, of course, if this is June and we're out picking some beautiful berries, in the, on the farm, this is not going to be probably true at that point. But I did learn the other day that apples in a traditional grocery store may have been picked a year ago. I couldn't believe that. I knew that apples have a long shelf life, but I didn't understand it was quite that long. So just kind of take this a bit with a grain of salt, but frozen berries are great for you. I love to put them in smoothies. So use that as a takeaway. It's wonderful. These flash frozen vegetables and fruits are a wonderful addition. And especially at times like right now where we don't have, a lot going on at the farmers markets or what. Okay, so we're going to move on now to 5 tips, 5 hope-inducing tips that we can employ into our lives kind of today, right now, to realize better physical health. Number 1, eat real foods. We want to choose foods that have a life force. As you see this banana, if you stuck it out on your countertop, it would eventually die. So we want to choose foods that were once alive. They have a life force. And, that's kind of easy when we're thinking about foods, fruits and vegetables like this, avocado, I've got a zucchini, I've got an apple. It's kind of easy to see whole foods. However, there is some confusion. So people often do say to me, what do you mean by that? Okay, so I mean green leafy vegetables, root vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, clean meats, fish, and poultry, fruits, especially berries, whole grains and beans. What do I mean by whole grain? Whole grain is something that does come out of a package, but it's something that has been minimally processed. And I read the label and this says organic quinoa on it, okay? So that's a whole grain. Nuts and seeds, healthy oils and fats, especially we're looking at olive oil, we're looking at butter, we're looking at mushrooms, garlic, and onion. So here are some whole foods that you can add into your body. And like I said, most experts, they might disagree as to which whole foods, but they will say, yeah, whole foods are a wonderful addition to promote health. Eat the Rainbow, the Institute for Functional Medicine. This is their slide. Everyone always loves to see this slide here. They recommend eating 7 to 9 fruits and vegetables a day. And a wonderful way to do this is to make a smoothie. Make a smoothie with, a little bit of kale or not collard greens, Swiss chard I like to use, or a little bit of spinach. Add a banana, maybe some blueberries, a little bit of frozen mango. There's our frozen fruit there. And it's a wonderful way to get a little bit closer to eating the rainbow. You can see that these different phytochemicals in these real whole foods, they all deliver different health benefits, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory. They're all a little bit different. And so it's a wonderful idea to eat as many of these colorful foods as you can. Now, another way to look at our health is to think about our microbiome. So our microbiome is in our gut. Our microbiome is known as our second brain. And it's this ecosystem in our gut that's this symbiosis of, viruses, bacteria, microorganisms. And ideally, they live in harmony. And, we're doing pretty well if everything's in the right proper balance for your body. But when some of these bad bacteria get out of control, oftentimes, food can be one of the culprits of this, of course. We're going to show some signs and symptoms. We're not going to feel very well. People often wonder, how is mood and food connected? Well, it's because of this microbiome. We take food from the outside into our body. It goes into our stomach, our belly. That's taking the outside in. It's the outside's meeting our body for the first time in our gut. Immune system, 60% of our immune system is housed in our gut. 60%. So this is how we're looking at immune system health. We're realizing that a lot of it begins in our gut. Also, there are a lot of different neurotransmitters that are housed primarily in the gut. Did you know that serotonin is 90% abundant in the gut? If you would have asked me that, I would have said, oh, in the brain, maybe there's a little in the gut. 90% of our serotonin is in the gut. So the vagus nerve will do a state of the union. Vagus nerve runs from our brain into our gut and travels back up again. And that's how this connection of our body, happens with brain and gut. So this is how our moods can be affected. This is how we can get brain fog, because this state of the union, everything's connected, right? So how can we look at this? Here's some different foods you might want to add in. Prebiotic foods are foods that feed the good bacteria in our gut. They help to, promote the bacteria that are beneficial to us. So some of these different foods are very healing. In addition, probiotic foods are actually foods that have healthy bacteria in them. People will ask, should I take a probiotic? There are foods, these fermented foods that have probiotics in them naturally as well. And here are some of these foods. And then finally, chicken soup. The healing effect of bone broth cannot be understated, in my opinion. Chicken soup has a wonderful anti-inflammatory effect. I think not only, just it feels good physically in our bodies, but it helps to promote good mood as well. So you can supercharge your microbiome by taking a look at these different foods. In addition, you can take a look at different herbs and spices. Feel free to just experiment with all these different herbs and spices that can help to boost your immunity. These are known to be antiviral here. Oregano, ginger, garlic, turmeric, rosemary, and chili powder. So we're going to, add in as much as we can, mix and match, and that's going to help us to feel better. So what do we do about taking, problem foods out? These foods are known to be inflammatory. Processed foods, sugar, gluten, dairy, alcohol, caffeine. Again, some of these can be bio-individual. Some people will tell me, I can tolerate dairy. I can tolerate certain kinds of dairy, and absolutely, your body is different than my body or someone else's body. But generally, if you're having some of these signs and symptoms and you're not feeling very well, a wonderful thing that you can do is just take these foods out. Take them out for a while. What do you have to lose? Take them out, add in some of the foods that we were just talking about, eat the rainbow, and just see if you feel any better. Experts agree that this is one of the best ways to get to the root cause of what's going on in your body. A wonderful way from a bio-individuality standpoint to figure out what's right for you to kind of get back to your optimal health. So we want to add in those wonderful foods that I just mentioned, and we're going to crowd out some of these foods here as well. Okay, so I know people are probably going to have questions about this. I promise I'm going to address this as we move on here. Label reading. So we've got these, processed foods, for instance. Sometimes, it's very obvious to see what's a good label. Like, for instance, here I've got some diced fire roasted tomatoes. They're organic, and basically what's in them is organic roasted tomatoes with some sea salt and garlic. So we've got some roasted tomatoes. So here's a processed food that's like, okay, that's kind of easy to understand this. This food here was shocking to me because this processed food is promoted by a weight loss company. So when people say, you know, I'm having a hard time getting the last 10 pounds off, so often, you know, I'll say, well, what are you eating? And they'll say, oh, this healthy bar, taking this healthy shake. Can you see what's in this product? Non-fat milk, soy protein isolate. So anytime we see soy that's kind of turned into, you know, an isolate or these different words they put around soy, that's an inflammatory food right there. Cacao gum, maltodextrin, which is another form of sugar, natural flavor, sunflower oil. So soy, sunflower, corn, all these oils are inflammatory. And we're seeing them here in this healthy food product. This to me is amazing. So we think this is on the front of this product would probably say, this is a healthy food, but you read the back and you go, what? You know, what's going on here? So you really have to pay attention to your processed foods. All processed foods are not bad, but you know, you have to really look for the ones that are good. Here's one that's very difficult to discern unless you're really reading labels. This was some turkey breast that I picked up at one point. And, you know, what would you think was in it? Turkey breast? Well, look what's in this turkey breast. So we've got turkey breast, which number one ingredient is turkey. So that's good. The number one ingredient is always the ingredient that's in the largest proportion. But then it's injected with a 25% solution of turkey broth, turkey seasoning, which includes maltodextrin, which is another word for sugar, salt, sugar, yeast, dextrose, another word for sugar, onion powder, garlic, salt, sodium phosphate, polysorbate 80. Oh, wow, that's in my turkey? Like, that's a little surprising. So we have to be really careful because, you know, foods that are processed by food companies, they want them to taste good. They want us to go back. They want these foods to light up the receptors in our brain, right? The dopamine to light up. And so we go back and eat more. And so you have to really watch that because we alone are the ones that need to really pay attention to what's best for our bodies and to protect our own health. We have to be really careful right now. So let's do another pop quiz. Whole wheat bread is a great way to get your whole grains. What do you think about that one? I'll give you a hint. It's a processed food.
So if you, some people are saying no, not necessarily, false, 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 depends, false. Oh, a lot of people are saying no, false, no. So that looks like that one is pretty clearly everyone's agreeing is a no or false.
Okay, very advanced group as you always are. So whole wheat bread usually contains very few whole wheat grains. In fact, the number one ingredient is usually wheat flour, which kind of sounds like something healthy, but it's not. It's white flour with a few whole grain flakes in it and usually sugar or even high fructose corn syrup. Don't be fooled by the whole grain label. It's finely ground, which also makes it act more like sugar in your body. So this is discouraging, right? How about number two? Dairy is nature's perfect food.
Nothing's come in yet. And by the way, I just wondered why this is coming in. There was a whole bunch of questions beforehand. Sandy, let me know when you want me to take those.
Okay, we'll take them more at the end, Megan, if that's okay.
Sure. False, no, false, false. For a cow, Terry says. False, false, not for humans. Yuck, no. So I would say the majority of people are saying no.
No, I like the answer. Only if you're a cow. That's wonderful. Yes, it has more than 60 naturally occurring hormones, and dairy can cause stomach discomfort, allergies, and sinus congestion. Again, this is a bio-individual thing. Some people tolerate sheep's cheese or goat meat or goat milk or goat cheese a little bit better. Bio-individual thing, but it is an inflammatory product, and especially if you have stomach problems or if you have allergy, sinus congestion. I'll tell you, that was one of the biggest changes that when I made that change in my life and took dairy out, I just felt so much better. So once again, something to think about, something to play with if you're, having some of these signs and symptoms. Okay, so let's move on to number two. We're going to be prepared. We're going to prepare these real whole foods. So we're going to prep our veggies when we come home from the grocery store or, the next day. We all know that when we have a refrigerator, when we open it up and food is prepared, or at least it's in the phases of being prepared, we're much more likely to feel calm and feel like maybe you're going to take some action on this food, right? Versus opening the refrigerator and you've got packages of meat, you've got packages of vegetables, and all the stuff that needs to be cooked, right? So my suggestion is to prep cook it. So you're going to spend a couple of hours. I just did this on Sunday and I felt so good. Definitely a hope-inducing exercise. What I did was I cooked for several hours to just kind of get things in order, to get some of these things in my refrigerator, prep, cook, and prepared, so that when it's time to make meals, I could just pull things out. And I'll give you some pictures and some examples of how I did this. But, you've got all the food, you come back from the grocery store, take a little bit of time to prep them. Pretend like you're a sous chef in a restaurant. You're going to prep the veggies, you're going to fill up the sink and wash and trim the tops. Maybe you're so industrious that you reserve the outer leaves to use for a soup stock, which I'll do sometimes. Cut up fresh vegetables, place them in water in their fridge, like celery, like broccoli, like carrots. So you're more likely to just munch on them. They're right there. Wash greens and place them, this is my favorite things to do, put them in a plastic bag with paper towel. If you put them in a paper towel, the plastic bag, they will stay fresh. Otherwise, you may have some trouble. I've done it other ways before, and this seems to be the best way to keep your greens fresh. So here's some examples of me doing this. These are pictures from this Sunday. So I've washed some kale, I've washed some salad greens. The other thing is I had a container of strawberries. I have 3 children, and I know for a fact that if I go ahead and cut them up, like you'll see on the right, that they're more likely to eat them, right? Just like, it just makes sense. And my daughter agreed. She goes, Mom, I know you say this all the time, and I didn't really agree with you, but now I do agree. We have just been picking at these strawberries all morning. So that was a wonderful way to get more, strawberries and fresh vegetables and fruits into my family's body. Just have them there, have them on the counter, have them visible. So the other thing when I was doing is I was batch cooking. So we're prepping our foods, and then I went ahead and I started batch cooking. So when we're looking at batch cooking, we're looking at filling our refrigerator with foods that are ready to go. So the next couple of meals you have are already prepared. This is how we're going to set ourselves up for success. Batch cooking soups or salads or pots of grains. I like to put sweet potatoes in the crock pot. All you do is you wash them. You put a little bit of water in the crock pot, turn on the crock pot for about 5 hours or so, and then you have, these finished sweet potatoes. Super easy. I usually always have something like that going. Roast vegetables and prepare and cook proteins. So that might mean at the same time while I've got my sweet potatoes going, I might have some carrots that are roasting, or maybe some beets. I might be cooking some chicken breasts, and I might then just take them and put them all in plastic or in glass containers to store them in the refrigerator. So some more examples. So here we go. I've got a bunch of stuff here kind of in my oven cooking. So I'm doing a whole bunch of things at once, right? Just to kind of save time. So I've got my oven, I've got my sweet potatoes in the oven this time. I have chicken on the left. I love to saute onions. I mean, I put sauteed onions and garlic kind of in everything. It just makes everything taste so much better. And then I've also got another pan here that I started working on some kale. And I put some of the onions that I prep cooked there into the kale. And so what I ended up doing was creating a soup. So I have a soup. But not only did I have a soup, but I also had some chicken that I put back in the refrigerator. I had some onions I put back in. I make big portions of these to be prepared for myself. And then also so my teenage children will, eat something healthy, because if it's not right there, they are going somewhere else. They now have a means to do it, a car, they can go. And so twofold here. I want to cook healthy for myself, and I want to make sure that my family has things right in front of them that they can eat that are really easy and visible. So the picture on the left is not my own refrigerator. I will tell you, I pulled that image from somewhere else. And so then this image on the right, which is not looking so great, was really, what I had done and what, storing in glass containers really kind of looks like in my life. So I just put the top on that and in the refrigerator, and I actually used it yesterday for dinner in something else. So we have all these things that are already prepared that are kind of ready to go. So those are the first 2 tips. Let's move on to another pop quiz.
I'm sorry, what were those?
These are carrots, and this is this Ellen? Kale. I sauteed some kale with some olive oil, and I put the sauteed onions in there. So I just sauteed that all up.
No, No, the picture on the right, it looks like hot dogs and greens.
Oh goodness, I know this is what happens when you don't use good quality pictures in a presentation. No, I'm sorry, those are carrots. Those are carrots and kale. The roasted carrots and kale. Can you see? They're little baby carrots. That makes sense now? Okay, so let's move on.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the good question. So next pop quiz. You should limit your egg intake because the high cholesterol content increases your risk of heart disease. So this was a question someone said, are eggs healthy or not? Because that was a big question a couple of decades ago as well. So what do you think about eggs? What do we think about eggs?
In moderation, they're healthy. True, false. Yes, you should limit them. Love them. Eggs are okay. I eat one a day. It's the perfect food. No limit for cholesterol, but limit regardless in moderation. So there seems to be a little bit more dichotomy on this question.
Yeah, yeah. Eggs were definitely vilified because of the high cholesterol, a link that was made in the 80s. But this, we know from multiple studies now, is eating cholesterol doesn't necessarily raise your blood cholesterol levels. And study after study has shown that it doesn't cause heart attacks. One of the main things we're looking at is more around inflammation. You know, instead of this high cholesterol causing problems. Now, this is definitely a controversial topic. You're going to find different information on this. According to the Institute of Functional Medicine and multiple studies, eating cholesterol isn't necessarily the problem. It's more problems with our blood sugar, problems with you know, inflammation connected with that. Okay, number 2, gluten-free food is healthy. Gluten-free food is healthy. What do we think about that?
Let's see what people are typing in. Not necessarily. I don't think so. Neither. Depends what? Depends on the ingredients. No idea. Not always, not necessarily.
Okay. So gluten-free processed foods are definitely not healthy. Processed foods. They contain sugar, other types of high glycemic flour, and more. Gluten-free cakes and cookies are still cakes and cookies. They just have substituted something in for the gluten instead. Other gluten-free whole foods are great, like these are gluten-free foods, right? So it depends on how we are defining gluten-free. I remember reading an article years ago, you know, where someone was saying, yeah, gluten-free foods, you know, aren't healthy. And that's exactly what they were saying. You know, you're right. They're not healthy. We need to eat real, naturally occurring gluten-free foods. Does that make sense? Naturally occurring. Okay. All right. So moving along here, we talked about individuality, right? We talked about how important it is to look at our own bodies and test and experiment, be our own little food detective to see what foods are good for us. Here are the wonderful ways to do this. To uncover food sensitivities, we will experiment with crowding out. We talked about crowding out those inflammatory foods, experiment with adding in real, whole, healing foods. And one of the best things you can do is consider an elimination diet, which I alluded to that before. It means taking out those inflammatory foods that I mentioned for a period of time, maybe up to 10, 11 days, take them out, eat real whole foods, and then see how you feel. And then where the pedal really meets the metal is you can choose to add one in back at a time, and then just journal and pay attention and notice how your body feels. And this is kind of a gold standard. There's other ways you can, you know, look at this. You can get food sensitivity testing, which, you know, is great too, but sometimes things show up that don't really make a whole lot of sense, but our bodies tell us the truth. Just as they'll tell us about, you know, waving the red flag, they'll let us know, our bodies let us know we're feeling well too, with good mood, with good digestion, with clear cognitive focus, right? So we're going to inform with bio-individuality. That's another thing that we're going to do. Okay, so pop quiz again. The main problem with sugar is that it's just empty calories. What do we think about this? The main problem with sugar is that
false, false, true, false, if only. False, no, false, Huh. Highly addictive.
Yep. So we're saying false here. Sugar isn't mere empty calories. It causes heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and more. It doesn't just make you put on weight, it makes you sick, even if you don't gain weight. So sugar is a problem. Sugar is a main problem. When we were talking about blood sugar dysregulation with, that leads to diabetes, some of these lifestyle diseases, they've also linked this with Alzheimer's and cognitive decline as well, sugar. And once again, that was one of the main products that was introduced back in the 80s when we were told fat is bad, eat more low-fat products. The processed food companies just put in more sugar. Okay, the next thing, fruit juice is healthier than soda because of the antioxidants. Fruit juice is healthier than soda because of the antioxidants. What do we think?
See, both are sugar problems. Both are not good. False. No. Not if it's high in sugar. Yes, but still not healthy.
Yeah, so we have false. A lot of these are like, it kind of depends on how you answer it too, right? Juice contains all of the sugar of fruit with none of the fiber that slows down its absorption. That's why I like smoothies even over fresh pressed juice, because smoothies have the fiber in there. So you're having more of the whole food, even though you've blended it up. I think this particular question is using, some of these examples of Odwalla or naked juices. They have a ton of sugar in them. And, you might argue, and I would agree with you, that perhaps those are a little bit better than drinking a can of Coke, but there's a high level of sugar in there. And so they're still not bad, or they're still not good for you. And definitely juice boxes, I used to think those were okay for my kids. I definitely don't now. So take a look at the sugar content. Sugar is inflammatory. Sugar is one of these problem foods that causes inflammation and leads to these chronic diseases. Okay, our next tip is to stay hydrated. Now you may say, hey, this is really easy. And you're right. All these tips are really very, very easy. They really, really are. Water absolutely is foundational for our health. It's something I love to go on and on about because I spent most of my life chronically dehydrated. I really, really did. I always have one of these with me. I mean, I'm so specific that this is my glass water bottle. I drink 3 of these a day. So, there's a general guideline, on how much you should drink. I'll show you that slide next. But I even have this water bottle, which if I go take a walk, I take this with me. So I make sure that I get my water in for the day, because I really have a tendency to, if left to my own devices, I will not drink enough water. But water is foundational for our health. It helps to stabilize our weight. It helps with our skin. It helps with inflammation. It boosts brain power. My daughter gets headaches a lot, and I'm always asking her to drink more water. She's never drinking enough water, and she gets headaches. So, here we have a very simple solution that can really help with some of these signs and symptoms, right? Water. Here's a life hack. 8 ounces first thing in the morning. One thing that I do before I have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea is I actually drink a whole one of these, because like I said, I left to my own devices, I will hardly drink it all. I drink a whole one first thing in the morning. And then throughout the day, you want to drink roughly your body weight divided by 2 ounces. So if you're 150 pounds, you might, consider 75 ounces roughly. This is all general, but that's roughly as much water as you might need as you go through the day. Simple little switch and simple little shift in behavior that can have a huge impact. I worked with a client for 3 months, and the thing that she told me, the one thing we started working on was making sure she was hydrated and she drank enough water. And we had a whole plan together, like I just told you. She, at the end of the time, said the one thing that affected me the most was drinking enough water. Because you know why? Not only did it hydrate her, but it helped her to move into other healthy habits. She was drinking enough water, she was hydrated, so she was more likely to go for a run. So she added a run in after she had her water, and then she was more likely to drink a smoothie and eat better. So this cascade or upward spiral that Barbara Fredrickson likes to talk about really happens with just small shifts. We're more willing and likely to add in other positive behaviors. Okay, so here's our last pop quiz. Red meat is unhealthy and causes cancer and heart disease. I'm going to go through this a little bit quicker, Megan. Red meat has been vilified for decades as a source of saturated fat and a cause of heart disease. It turns out neither meat nor fat is the enemy. Indeed, meat is a great source of protein and key nutrients. It actually has a lot of vitamins and minerals. Again, this is a case of bio-individuality. I work with clients who say, there's no way I could eat red meat. It grosses me out. And they lead more towards a plant-based diet. So, that is where bio-individuality comes in. That is where our individual differences in our bodies tell us what's good for us. But I think red meat has gotten a bad rap. Now, the thing about meat is we really need to look at animals that were treated well. We need to look at grass-fed, definitely, because that's the kind of meat that has these beneficial vitamins and minerals versus the factory farm meat. So there's a big if kind of right here. Okay, next one. Vegetable oils are better for your health than animal-based fats. False. Refined vegetable oils, and I talked about this earlier. Some of these overprocessed, high in omega-6 fats oils like sunflower, corn, and soy, they cause a lot of inflammation. These are the oils that things are fried in a lot of times. Peanut oil, those kind of oils, they were touted as being healthy because they came from vegetables, but they're very unstable and they're a problem with inflammation. So we do want to look at this. Other than, and I put EVOO, but we know Rachel Ray, right? Extra virgin olive oil is something we want to be cooking with instead. So we're looking at extra virgin olive oil because it's high in omega. It does have some omega-6s in it, but it's high in omega-3s. Okay, so my last quick tip for you is to get support, on all of these wonderful suggestions that you can add into your life right now. One of the best ways that you can get some support with, maybe you're looking for support on doing a better job cooking for your family, or maybe you want to drink more water. Tell a friend, tell someone, go public, let them know what you're trying to do, and they can check in with you and say, hey, Sandy, how are you doing with that? Cooking a meal most nights, batch cooking, how are you doing? Also, people who track what they're doing, some of the most successful people that I've seen change their diets, they keep a journal of what they're eating and take a look, and they give themselves little stars when they're happy, with what they did, and they're constantly, moving to make changes as well. Like, next time I think I'll not eat this and I'll eat this instead. So track your observations because it becomes very real when you've written it down. And then, if you need some help, engage an expert. There's wonderful books. I'm happy to recommend, just engage someone that can help you meet these goals. If you don't, if you're not able to do this yourself, our health is so important. It's kind of the most important foundation that we can have for our health and happiness. So consider getting some additional support. So just to wrap up, every single tip that I have mentioned is a hope-inducing action. What we want to do is take small steps in all of these different areas. Some of you may say, oh yeah, I do a lot of these things. I know how to do this. Oftentimes we know it, but we don't do it. So we're looking, when we engage hope, to take some steps forward in any of these different ways. James Clear has a wonderful book about change and how change is made. And he says, think about this. If you make just a small shift in your daily routine, it adds up to a 37% cumulative change over the year. So if I'm making a healthy meal tonight, that probably won't make an overall huge effect on my health. But imagine if I do that every single night. Or if I drink enough water today, it may not make a huge difference. But if I do that over the year, think about that. And at the Whole Being Institute, we love to talk about that. Like a 5% change. If I can make 5% change today to reach towards better health, then what would that look like? What would that look like? So we're looking into the future, and hope involves the future. So if you were to take a small step in one of these areas, what would that look like? What would you be doing? What would you be doing differently? And what will people notice is different about you? Says Linda Wallace from the Whole Being Institute. What would you do? What would people notice? So just take a moment to think about that. Because what we're trying to do, why this is so important, is we're trying to create a better future for ourselves. We're trying to create, go from this self, our real self, as Megan always teaches, to this best version of our future self. So what would that look like? Just take a moment to dream about that. What could you do to get a little bit closer to that? And then, as Maria Serra from the Whole Being Institute says, the most important time, though, when we're looking at how we're going to affect the future is now. What can you do right now? What can you do right now? When we're looking at high hope, we know that those who have high hope, they are less likely to have chronic disease, less likely to have diabetes, less likely to have cancer, heart disease. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to, combine this knowledge of nutrition with hope, and we're going to move towards a better future. So here we are in the swamp. This is Maria Serra's wonderful example. This is how we are right now, and how can we make a 5% change into this better area, the pond, our future self? What can we do today, right now? So that's all. I just would like to end in gratitude. I would like to give gratitude, one, to our beautiful bodies who carry us through the day and hardly ever complain, hardly ever throw up these red flags. They do a good job of meeting our needs every day. Gratitude also for the people who responsibly grow our food and the hands that prepare our food, including our own hands. And gratitude to Megan McDonough and the wonderful Whole Being Institute partnership with the JCC and all the beautiful work and positivity that you're bringing to the world.
Well, thank you, dear Sandy. That was amazing what you could pack into an hour. I learned a lot. I'm re-inspired to eat and prepare my meals differently. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for this hour of positivity. Thank you, Sandy, for sharing your wisdom. May you all have a great, healthy day today, tomorrow, and the rest of the week. Oh, the rest of your life. That would be even better. Much love to you all. Take care. Bye-bye.